This was a safe neighborhood. Quiet, predictable, no break-ins, no weirdos lurking around. The kind of place where the biggest drama was whose lawn got mowed first on the weekends. I had lived on this street for 3 years without a single reason to feel unsafe. Until the footsteps started. The first time I noticed them, I was walking home late from a friend's house. Earbuds in, hoodie pulled tight against the cold. The streets were mostly empty, just the occasional porch light humming in the dark. I wasn't in a rush, just enjoying the silence when I heard it. A step. Just one. I paused, looking back. Nothing but a row of dimly lit houses and empty sidewalks, a flickering streetlight at the corner. I told myself I imagined it, that maybe my foot scuffed weird against the pavement. So I kept walking. A second step, then another. My stomach twisted. It wasn't an echo. It wasn't the wind. The steps were too precise, too deliberate. They matched mine, beat for beat. I stopped again. This time, I turned fully around. Nothing. The street stretched out behind me, completely still. A couple of parked cars. The wind rattling dry leaves across the pavement. I laughed at myself. Nervous, uneasy. I was being ridiculous. I picked up my pace, focusing on the warm glow of my porch light ahead. That's when the footsteps sped up too. My breath hitched. My heart pounded so hard I felt it in my throat. I walked faster. The steps kept up, matched me, chased me. No matter how many times I turned around, there was no one there. I practically ran the last few feet to my door, fumbling my keys, slamming it shut behind me. My ears were ringing, my hands shaking. But outside, the street was empty. Nothing. No one. I barely slept that night. Every sound in the house made me flinch. Every creak of the walls, every whisper of wind against the window. I checked the locks 3 times before finally collapsing onto my bed, telling myself I was just on edge. I was overtired, maybe a little paranoid. That was all. But then it happened again and again. For a week straight, every time I walked home at night, the footsteps followed. Never appearing, never stopping, never letting me catch them. I stopped listening to music when I walked, ears trained for any sound, any clue. I switched routes. I even tried tricking whatever it was. Stopping abruptly, doubling back, spinning in circles. Nothing, but the moment I started walking forward again. Step, 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 point. I started driving instead. Even for short distances. My legs ached for the walk, but the thought of hearing those footsteps again made my skin crawl. Then I got the idea for the cameras. I set them up outside my house, 2, both facing the street. I figured if someone was following me, I'd catch them on tape. I'd prove to myself it was just some weird creep. Prank. Anything. Normal. That night I walked. My stomach clenched with every step. The air was cold, the night quiet. I forced myself forward, making sure to take the exact same route as before. And, like clockwork, step, 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 point. I clenched my jaw and kept going. My house was in sight. The cameras were rolling. If I was being followed, this time I'd see it. I reached my porch, slammed the door, and rushed to my laptop. Heart racing, hands shaking, I pulled up the feed and rewound the footage. I hit play. There I was, walking down the street, looking over my shoulder. I fast-forwarded, paused, rewound. I was alone. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the moment the footsteps started. The video glitched. A sharp flickering static. The screen froze, then jumped ahead. 10 seconds. 10 seconds completely missing. Like the camera had blinked. I watched again and again. Every time at the exact moment the footsteps should have started, the footage cut out. I sat back, pulse hammering in my ears. My hands were ice cold. My stomach twisted in knots. Something was wrong. Something was really, really wrong. And for the first time, I realized whatever was following me, it didn't want to be seen. I couldn't avoid it forever. That night, I made a choice. No cameras, no tricks, just me facing it. I walked, slowly, deliberately, and the footsteps came. Step, step, step. I didn't stop. I didn't turn. My pulse pounded, but I forced myself forward. Then, a breath. Not mine, not the wind. A slow, deliberate inhale just behind my ear. I ran. The sound followed. Closer than ever. I sprinted, keys in hand, my house a blur in the distance. The air felt heavy, like something was closing in. I threw myself through the door, slamming it shut, locking it tight. Silence. And then, the doorbell rang. My phone buzzed, a notification from the security camera. Motion detected. With shaking hands, I opened the app. The video loaded, flickered, then played. A figure stood at my door. Featureless, shadowed. Just standing there, waiting. The feed glitched. And the doorbell rang again.
The elevator doors slid open with a mechanical groan, spilling me into the dim, cavernous parking garage. The place was nearly silent, save for the hum of fluorescent lights and the occasional distant echo of tires screeching on the upper levels. My car was parked near the far wall, where the light barely reached. I had been out with friends, just a few drinks, nothing wild, but the buzz had long since faded. Now, all I wanted was to get home, take a shower, and pretend that I hadn't caught myself checking over my shoulder 3 separate times since leaving the bar. As I walked, the sharp click of my boots echoed around me, repeating back in a way that made it hard to tell if the sound was mine alone. I pulled my jacket tighter around myself. You're just being paranoid. I reached into my bag, fumbling for my keys, and in that moment, they slipped from my fingers, clattering onto the concrete. Of course. Sighing, I bent down to grab them. They were gone. I blinked, scanning the ground. I had just heard them hit the concrete. Kneeling, I ran my hand over the cool, dusty surface. Nothing. A sharp prickle crawled up my spine. Slowly, I straightened, swallowing against the dryness in my throat. My eyes darted around the garage. Empty. No movement, no sound but the buzz of the overhead lights. Then I saw it. My keys were sitting neatly on my windshield, placed precisely, dead center. For a second, my mind refused to process it. I had just dropped them. They had hit the ground. There was no way. A cold knot tightened in my stomach. I forced a breath, squared my shoulders, and took slow steps toward my car. The closer I got, the more I expected to hear movement, to see someone duck behind a pillar. anything. That would make sense of what just happened. Nothing. I hesitated, hand hovering over the car door handle. My reflection stared back at me in the darkened glass, face pale under the sickly garage lights. I grabbed my keys and got in. Lock the doors, start the car, get out of here. But I couldn't shake it. That feeling, like someone was still watching. I started the engine, the rumble of the car filling the oppressive silence. I checked the rearview mirror out of habit, expecting nothing but the empty parking lot behind me. Instead, there was a figure, far away, standing just beyond the reach of the nearest light, unmoving, watching. My breath hitched. Was he there before? I stared, heart pounding in my chest. The figure didn't move. It didn't shift, didn't step forward, didn't turn away. Just stood there, face obscured by distance and shadow. I forced a shaky exhale. Drive. Just drive. Hands gripping the wheel, I put the car in reverse, my pulse hammering as I kept my eyes locked on the mirror. The figure stayed perfectly still, the gap between us shrinking as I backed out of my spot. I flicked the gear into drive, ready to leave. But just as I hit the gas, my phone buzzed in the cup holder. A single notification. I glanced down. Unknown number. My stomach twisted as I tapped the screen. A single image loaded. It was a photo of me, taken just moments ago. From behind. Another buzz. Another image. This time, a close-up of my hand gripping the steering wheel. Then another. A frame-by-frame of me reacting, looking at my phone. I threw the phone onto the passenger seat, my pulse slamming against my ribs. Just go. Just get out of here. I didn't go straight home that night. I drove in circles, took random turns, convinced myself that if anyone was following me, I'd shake them. By the time I finally pulled into my driveway, my knuckles were white on the steering wheel. For days, I tried to push it away. The fear, the questions, the images on my phone. Who took them? How? Why? I changed my locks, stopped going out at night, ignored the itching sensation of unseen eyes. But the paranoia sank in, gnawing at me in ways I couldn't explain. The little things started happening. A door left slightly ajar when I knew I closed it. My phone's ringer turning on after I'd set it to silent. My bathroom mirror fogged over as if someone had taken a shower while I was out. I told myself it was nothing. Stress. A trick of my own mind. Then, a week later, I found it. Another item, carefully placed. This time on my bedside table, my keys. The plan had been simple. A few hours in, a few hours out, back before dark. I'd checked the weather, packed light, even told my sister where I was going. It was supposed to be a break from everything. Instead, the trail had twisted on me. One wrong turn. Just one. The thing they don't tell you about being lost is that it doesn't happen all at once. It's not like the movies where someone steps into the woods and suddenly has no idea where they are. No, at first you convince yourself it's fine. You just haven't hit the right marker yet. Then the sun starts dipping low and every path starts to look the same. The birds go quiet. The wind sounds different. That's when the panic starts crawling in, slow and steady. I stopped to check my phone. No service, of course. I exhaled, trying to keep myself from spiraling. Breathe. Think. I had a map, but I had no idea how far I'd veered off. If I could find a ridge or a clearing, I might be able to get a signal. Then I saw it. A campsite, just a little off-trail tucked between the trees. Relief surged through me. Someone else was out here. Maybe they had a working GPS. Maybe they knew the trail better than I did. I picked up my pace, but the closer I got, the wronger it felt. The tent was there, the fire pit too, a small pile of gear, but no people. And the fire, the embers were still warm. I swallowed hard, scanning the trees. Hello? My voice felt too loud in the quiet. No answer. I took another step forward, heart thudding. The tent flap was half open, and I could see a sleeping bag inside, unzipped like someone had just crawled out. Then I noticed the footprints. They circled the site, deep, uneven impressions in the dirt, pacing, running. And then I saw something worse. No prints leading away. A sharp crack echoed through the trees behind me. I spun, breath caught in my throat. The woods were a dense tangle of green and shadow, the last light of the sun barely threading through the canopy. I scanned the trees, my ears straining, pulse thudding against my ribs. Nothing. Just the breeze rustling the leaves. I swallowed hard. Nope. I'm not staying here. Standing up, I forced myself to move, not toward the campsite, but away from it, back toward the trail. If I could get to higher ground, maybe I could get my bearings. Maybe I could get a signal. The air felt thicker now, heavier. The silence wasn't empty. It was waiting. I tried to keep my breathing steady as I climbed up the incline, but my nerves were unraveling fast. The forest had changed. At least it felt like it had. Like it was closing in, like the trees were pressing tighter together. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Not mine. I froze mid-step, heart slamming against my ribs. The sound was faint, just barely there. But I knew what I heard. Something was behind me. I forced myself to move, faster now, stumbling as I climbed. My lungs burned, each breath feeling like it was clawing its way out of me. Sweat dripped down my spine despite the cold. My feet ached, sliding over damp leaves, my ankles twisting painfully. I wasn't imagining this. I reached the top of the incline, gasping for breath, and grabbed my phone again. Please, please, just one bar. Still nothing. Then a whisper of movement. Too close. I didn't look back. I just ran. I didn't sleep. I didn't stop. I didn't think. I ran. The forest felt endless. My legs burned, muscles seizing, but I kept pushing forward. The cold bit deep, a knife in my ribs. The taste of blood coated my tongue from gasping too hard. Then, water. A river. My only way out. The current was strong, brutal. The moment I plunged in, the shock stole my breath. The water was thick, churning, swallowing me whole. It shoved me under, icy fingers locking around my chest, the weight of it dragging me down. When I washed up miles downstream, I heard it, a car horn. I barely made it to the road before I collapsed. Someone found me. I survived. But I never told them about the footprints, the campsite, or the figure standing at the tree line. Because just before they wheeled me inside the hospital, just before exhaustion took me under, I looked out the ambulance window. And I saw it, standing at the edge of the trees, watching,